Viewer advisory. The events you are about to witness are based on a true story. Some scenes may be deeply unsettling for certain audiences. Viewer discretion is strongly recommended. The phone call came at 3:47 a.m. on a cold October morning in 2019. Detective Sarah Chun had been working homicide for 12 years, but the tremor in the caller's voice still sent chills down her spine. "There's been a murder at Caldwell and Pierce Law," the voice whispered. "And I know who did it." What followed would become one of the most shocking cases of workplace revenge turned deadly that the city had ever seen. A story where decades of loyalty met calculated betrayal, and where justice would finally be served in the most unexpected way. Tonight's story is one that will leave you rattled. Before we dive in, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and tell us in the comments where in the world you're tuning in from. Now, let's begin. Margaret Turner had been the backbone of Caldwell and Pierce Law for 30 years. She knew every secret, every shortcut, every dirty detail that kept the prestigious firm running. At 62, she had weathered countless storms, survived office politics, and earned the respect of everyone from junior associates to senior partners. Her oak desk, polished to perfection, had been her command center since 1994. From there, she orchestrated the complex symphony of legal proceedings that made millionaires out of the lawyers whose names graced the building's marble lobby. But on that fateful Tuesday in September 2019, everything changed. Ashley Reed, the 28-year-old daughter of a board member's golf partner, had been fast-tracked to operations director after just 1 year at the firm. With her designer suits, perfectly manicured nails, and an MBA that hung on her wall like a weapon, Ashley represented everything the old guard feared about the new generation. The confrontation was swift and brutal. Margaret was typing up a legal brief when Ashley's heels clicked down the hallway with predatory precision. "Margaret," she began, her smile as sharp as broken glass, "I've been reviewing our administrative structure. It's time we modernized." The words that followed would haunt the halls of Caldwell and Pierce forever. "You're great, but outdated. We need fresh energy, someone who understands today's workflow." After 30 years of dedicated service, Margaret Turner was being discarded like yesterday's newspaper. But Margaret Turner was not a woman who went quietly into the night. 2 months after a forced retirement, the firm was in chaos. The Martinson case, worth $12 million, was falling apart because Kelsey, Margaret's inexperienced replacement, couldn't locate the original signed contracts. The trial was 3 days away, and without those documents, Caldwell and Pierce faced not just financial ruin, but professional disgrace. The desperate phone call to Margaret came at 8:13 a.m. on a Thursday. Jason Pierce, one of the senior partners, could barely contain his panic. "Margaret, we have a disaster. We need you back." This was Margaret's moment. The moment she had been planning for 67 days. She didn't just return as a secretary begging for her old job back. She negotiated her return as an independent consultant with triple her former salary, her own corner office, and direct reporting to the CEO. Most importantly, she would no longer answer to Ashley Reed. What nobody knew, what wouldn't come to light until the investigation began, was that Margaret had been systematically documenting every illegal activity, every ethical violation, every corner-cutting scheme that Caldwell and Pierce had engaged in over 3 decades. She had names, dates, dollar amounts, and evidence that could bring down not just individual lawyers, but the entire firm. Ashley Reed had made a fatal miscalculation. She thought she was discarding a harmless old woman. Instead, she had awakened a sleeping giant who held the power to destroy everything. The first sign that something was terribly wrong came 3 weeks after Margaret's triumphant return. Ashley started receiving anonymous packages at her apartment. The first contained photocopies of falsified billing records from 2017. The second included evidence of client fund misappropriation. The third contained photographs of Ashley meeting with opposing counsel in cases where she had clear conflicts of interest. Ashley's carefully constructed world began to crumble. She started working late, staying in the office until well past midnight, desperately trying to cover her tracks. But Margaret was always one step ahead. For every document Ashley tried to destroy, Margaret had 3 copies hidden in different locations. For every lie Ashley told, Margaret had recorded conversations that proved otherwise. The psychological warfare was methodical and devastating. Ashley's hair began falling out from stress. She developed an ulcer. Her relationship with her fiancé collapsed when he discovered the depth of her legal troubles. But the worst part was the isolation. One by one, Margaret systematically turned Ashley's allies against her, revealing just enough of Ashley's corruption to make her a pariah in her own workplace. On the night of October 15th, 2019, Ashley Reed made the decision that would seal her fate. She broke into Margaret's new corner office, intending to steal the evidence that was destroying her life. What she found instead was Margaret waiting for her in the dark, a digital recorder in her hand. "I knew you'd come," Margaret said softly. Desperate people always make predictable choices. What happened next would be debated in courtrooms for months. Ashley claimed self-defense. Margaret's version was different. According to the security footage that Margaret had secretly installed weeks earlier, Ashley attacked first, grabbing a heavy crystal paperweight from Margaret's desk and swinging it at the older woman's head. Margaret Turner was found dead at 6:30 a.m. by the cleaning crew, her skull crushed, blood pooling around her mahogany desk. Ashley Reed was discovered unconscious nearby, apparently having slipped and fallen while trying to flee the scene, striking her head on the corner of a filing cabinet. But Margaret Turner had planned for this possibility too. Hidden in a safety deposit box across town was a detailed confession, dated and notarized 3 days before her death. In it, Margaret revealed everything: Ashley's crimes, the firm's corruption, and her own plan for ultimate justice. She had known Ashley would eventually snap under the pressure. She had counted on it. The confession also contained something else: a complete record of every illegal activity at Caldwell and Pierce over the past 30 years. Names, dates, financial records, recorded conversations. Margaret had spent 3 decades not just as a loyal employee, but as a meticulous archivist of corporate crime. When the FBI raided Caldwell and Pierce 2 days after Margaret's murder, they found exactly what Margaret's confession had promised. 17 lawyers were indicted on charges ranging from fraud to money laundering. The firm collapsed within 6 months, its assets seized and distributed to the clients who had been defrauded over the years. Ashley Reed was charged with first-degree murder. During her trial, prosecutors painted a picture of a privileged young woman who had destroyed not just Margaret Turner's life, but the lives of countless others through her corruption and ultimate act of violence. The defense tried to portray Ashley as a victim of Margaret's psychological manipulation, but the evidence was overwhelming. The jury took less than 4 hours to reach their verdict: guilty on all counts. During the sentencing hearing, Margaret's daughter stood before the court and read a letter her mother had written to be delivered only if Ashley was convicted. "Justice," Margaret had written, "is not always swift, but it is always patient. I may not be here to see it served, but I know that truth has a way of surviving even when those who speak it do not." Ashley Reed was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. She sits in a cell today, her law degree worthless, her future destroyed by the same ruthless ambition that had once elevated her above a woman who had given 30 years of her life in service to others. But Margaret Turner's legacy lived on in ways Ashley could never have imagined. The evidence Margaret had meticulously collected led to the prosecution of dozens of other corrupt lawyers across the state. Legal reforms were implemented to prevent the kind of systemic fraud that Caldwell and Pierce had perpetrated for decades. Most importantly, Margaret's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of discarding experience and wisdom in favor of youth and connections. The final twist came during Ashley's sentencing, when it was revealed that Margaret had donated her entire consultant salary, over $300,000, to a legal aid society that provided free representation to victims of corporate fraud. Even in death, Margaret Turner was still protecting those who couldn't protect themselves. Detective Sarah Chun, who had worked the case from that first 3:47 a.m. phone call, later said that in 30 years of police work, she had never seen a more methodical pursuit of justice. Margaret Turner knew exactly what she was doing from the moment she was fired, Chin explained to reporters. She turned her own murder into the ultimate act of accountability. Today, a small plaque hangs in the lobby of the legal aid office that Margaret's final paycheck helped fund. It reads simply, "In memory of Margaret Turner, who proved that experience and justice are never outdated." Ashley Reed's appeals have all been denied. She will spend the rest of her life behind bars, paying for the moment she decided that 30 years of loyalty and service meant nothing compared to her own ambition. In the end, Margaret Turner got exactly what she had planned for: complete and total justice, served not just for herself, but for every person who had ever been crushed by those who abused their power. The case files are sealed now, but those who worked the investigation remember it as a perfect example of how justice, while sometimes delayed, is never truly denied. Margaret Turner may have lost her life, but she won something far more valuable: the assurance that evil actions have consequences, and that sometimes the most powerful weapon against corruption is simply an old woman with nothing left to lose and everything to gain. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what you think about Margaret's ultimate act of justice. Did she go too far, or did Ashley Reed get exactly what she deserved? Your thoughts matter, and I read every single comment. Until next time, remember that justice may be blind, but it's never forgotten. See you in the next video.